enough time for questions and other things that we want to do. So we're recording. I'm gonna share a screen. I'm gonna work off slides. Laura has seen these, some of them, but I do feel like something has changed. I just feel this in my own presentation. To talk a little bit, I just want to make this point in the beginning because I am teaching you about breathing. I think there's things that have been amazing to me is what doctors are coming forward and advising people that from my Buteco practice have been in place since the 80s, and I've been teaching since 2003. And then now that the doctors are saying, this was a good thing to do. Well, yeah, we've been saying that for 40 years. We've been saying this for 40 years. And so it's really very, very validating. And some of those things are like, we'll talk about putting people on their stomach, proning. We've known all along in the medical world that is the best position to get the best respiratory health if you can tolerate it even when you're sleeping, just to be lying on your stomach. And we'll go over some of that. But more importantly, and this is just something I just want to speak to since I'm not a doctor, but I am in this theoretical place right now. What we're not paying attention to is to really speak to the underlying reality of why people are so sick in their lungs and have so many comorbidities. And a part of it has to do with air pollution. And I think that's the number one really pace that we should be taking a look at. Because 91% of the world's population does not have clean air to breathe. I mean, that's a huge number of people, and it's even up to 95 last time I heard who talked about it. Now, of course, World Health Organization. But of course, now that's a little different because the air is cleaning up. India, they're seeing the Himalayas for the first time in 30 years. But the interesting thing is that, and even this is panning out with people who do get sick, only 18% of the 9 million people a year that die from air pollution that we know about, 72% are from heart attacks and strokes, and only 18% from respiratory compromise. Half of that cancer, half of that asthma. But even asthmatics are not getting sick with COVID. It's not a co-condition. It's very low on the list. Only severe asthmatics. And I think that has to do with the fact that most asthmatics know how to medicate themselves, so they're not in that susceptible place right at the moment. And the reason I say only 9 million people, because we don't know in terms of other cancers whether they consider them air pollution driven. And I think that's really an important piece because in the University of Wisconsin did a study and 97% of the tumors that they dissected were filled with microplastics. And so we don't know who's dying from other diseases that are really related to air pollution. And, it seems...
Excuse me for a second, Robert. Could we ask everybody to mute themselves? Because then I think your recording will come through much better in your voice right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, much better. Let me just find that train of thought again. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that, in terms of some obviousness is that the virus, the one thing that it has done is clean up the air. And it's like, okay, so is this not an obvious result and an obvious thing that we should pay attention to? And that the doctors are talking about less people are coming in for heart attacks and strokes. They think they're maybe staying home because they're afraid to come to the hospital, but it also may be because the air is cleaner and they're not suffering as dramatically, because they did a little group called Smart Filters did a study in Singapore way before this happened with a number of students, and it was on a very polluted day, and they took some of the students and gave them air filters and masks, and some of the students they did not. And within 48 hours, the ones who didn't have it had debilitated coronary issues and blood vessel issues. So it doesn't take long for air pollution both to affect you and both to clean it up a little bit. So a couple of healthy attitudes towards breathing is breathing is a sacred gift. I really treasure the fact that keeps me alive. And so therefore I am wanting to be honoring and caring and tender and find the grace in breathing. And that's pretty much what they're finding now too. When they force people to breathe more strongly, it does less good to them in the hospitals. They really are noticing now that the ventilators are, 80% of the people on ventilators are dying, don't recover from being on a ventilator. I find that it is the thing that keeps me in touch with myself. It's my portal into my inner world, because that's where it goes. The nature of breathing itself means us no harm, and it can be a teacher because it has a behavior. And Laura, you were talking about really learning how you nose breathe instead of mouth breathe, going back and forth. And so you're watching the behavior of when you use your mouth for breathing, as opposed to when you use your nose for breathing. And that's one of the major issues. And breathing can help self-regulate body functions and the nervous system. And we'll go into more detail here. So a couple of things we're going to cover. So I want to really change the wording from deep breathing, which usually means some mouth breathing and taking forceful breaths, to learning how to breathe from a deeper place within inside of yourself. Something up there, Irene? All right, taking notes? Yeah, you'll get a copy of these slides, so you'll have them. And so the big word that came through was recruitment, which I think was great to see that, which means how do I get my lungs more engaged, breathing more fully, and recruiting the parts of my lungs that I normally don't breathe when I breathe shallowly or when I hold my breath. So we're going to look at that a little bit, and learning how to open those lungs to full capacity. So we're going to play a little bit with that as well. So a couple of things we're going to cover is nose breathing. A posture, when you really want to work with your breath, that facilitates the ease of movement of breath and body. We want to make sure we understand that why the tongue needs to be at the roof of the mouth for facilitating airway resistance, lack of airway resistance, easing the airway resistance, breathing in relationship to the gravitational forces of the planet, both the pull down and the lift up, and giving you a little bit of a breathing sound, a silent sound, which will open up your airways and put your lungs more in charge of breathing than your willful way of breathing, and learning how to breathe from a deep place. So we're going to spend a little time with that, but I want to talk about a few more things to say why nose breathing is essential, and think of 3 important things to remember. One is you breathe through your mouth as often as you eat through your nose. Okay, it's a little bit of a quip, but certainly hopefully we'll get the point across, right? And you pace your activity level so you can continue to breathe through your nose, including exercise all the time. And essential now while you're outside. So even when exercising, some of you have seen this. This is an Olympic gold medal winner on the left-hand side of your screen, running 440 meters, a quarter mile, fastest woman in the world at that distance, or was a couple of years ago. Nice, easy pace, mouth closed, nose breathing, winning the race. And she has applied these practices that we're doing today. Swimmer on the right, very hard to do. So he's very settled inside of himself, very easy in his body, able to nose breathe while he's swimming. My idol, because I'm a swimmer for 60 years, but there's no pool around right now. So the major benefits of nose breathing, this is a couple of pictures. This one, the bottom is a very old picture. This one is by Alexander Thesaurus. And I just show this picture to show the turbinates in the nose that help make the air come in as a spiral so that we can see how air is traveling, put it into our imagination. As we breathe in, see if we can feel how it rocks our body, because that is what sets up the movement of the body in a very non-linear way. So just a little more about the nose. The nose is the guardian of the lungs. The nose protects the lungs in the body. It has the potential to filter anything above 0.5 microns, which is pretty small because the human hair is 50 microns. Unfortunately, it does not filter smoke and viruses. Viruses go below 0.5 microns. It regulates the temperature of the air to the lungs. The lungs only like body temperature air. So while it travels through the nose, it picks up heat or discharges heat into the blood supply that's in the nose. It regulates the humidity of the air for the lungs, brings the right amount of moisture to help the lungs facilitate their movement. through the mucous membranes. It produces antibacterial molecules. And most importantly, right now, and there's a big discussion in the breathing world about nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is made in the vessels inside the nose, and it has a very powerful anti-inflammatory effect in the lungs and in the airways. And after 2006, they tested the ability of nitric oxide to kill viruses. And they found that it actually did kill the SARS virus in 2006. So we don't know yet, and there's been no studies at this particular point whether it's going to kill the coronavirus, but if we know it did it once, maybe it'll do it again. This virus is pretty mysterious in its behavior, but it's worth a try. And it reduces the anxiety by breathing right in the autonomic nervous system to balance out the sympathetic and parasympathetic. And it promotes the use of the diaphragm. Anytime a question comes up, please just raise your hand. This is yeah, let me unmute you, Irene. Or you unmute yourself then, if you would.
You say that it produces antibacterial molecules. How does it do that?
The nose.
Uh-huh.
The nose has part of there's part of the immune system is in the membranes of the nose, and so there are cells in the epithelial linings that produce antibacterial molecules, immunoglobulins that kill bacteria.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and some doctors believe that this virus is really an epithelial, it attacks the epithelial lining of the blood vessels themselves. That's where most of the damage is coming from. That's why we're seeing so much clotting going on right now. And it gives the body a chance to mount a response before it gets into the lungs, because it has to pass through the nose and the back of the throat, so the body can get an early warning system rather than going directly right into the lungs if you breathe in through your mouth. It's my personal opinion. So what we want to do is we want to avoid hyperventilating, and hyperventilating not only just panting, but mouth breathing is a hidden hyperventilation. It gives off too much of the gas exchange. An increase in the usual breathing rate is also one of the signs for people when they're starting to have COVID, that their breathing rate is increasing, which says something's happening in their lungs. We want to avoid any chest breathing or shallow breathing, gasping for air, frequent yawning and sighing and belching. Those are all signs of your hyperventilating. So why is hyperventilating an issue? Because it gives off too much carbon dioxide. This is a Buteyko basic understanding, and it has also been around since 1904. It's called the Bohr effect. And the way to think about this is that the atmosphere outside of our body is made up of oxygen and carbon dioxide and nitrogen, and it is a very specific ratio. And we're seeing that ratio in carbon dioxide rise right now, which gives us climate change, warming, storms. The same thing is true in the body. We have a certain ratio of carbon dioxide to oxygen to nitrogen. When we breathe out of our mouth or hyperventilate too much, we give off too much of that carbon dioxide. We are meant to exhale a certain amount, but not an over amount. And the rule is carbon dioxide, at the simplest way of understanding it, regulates the distribution of oxygen from the hemoglobin in the red blood cells to all the cells in the body. When carbon dioxide levels are low in the body, oxygen does not flow as easily, and the cells go into a starvation mode, which puts a tremendous amount of stress on the organism. So we cannot think of carbon dioxide as a waste gas. It is a byproduct of cellular respiration, and it helps regulate the distribution of oxygen. It's a very important principle to think. We don't breathe because we need oxygen. We breathe because our body is regulating the amount of CO2 that we have in our body. When it rises too high, the body initiates another breath. There's a mechanism in the brainstem that controls the levels of carbon dioxide. When we breathe out through our nose, 2/3 of the level that we breathe out stays in our sinuses, and we breathe that right back in. So the best example I can have to make this point is when somebody's hyperventilating and they look like they're going to faint, and somebody gives them a paper bag to breathe back into, they breathe back their own carbon dioxide, and they recover from the fainting. But the blood is now releasing the oxygen to flow towards the brain, which it wasn't doing when somebody was hyperventilating, which is why why their body felt like it needed to faint. So very important. So that's the real major reason for nose breathing, to keep our body in the chemical balance that it needs to be in when we're breathing. Okay, and that's a lot of information on the internet and that. So let's take a look at how mouth breathing activates the nervous system. And when we activate the nervous system over a long haul, we're putting a tremendous amount of stress on our body. And one of the downsides of being activated in a fight or flight or mobilized activity is that it puts the nervous system on alert, and the nervous system goes into being overactive, and that debilitates its potential to be able to manage real threats when they come to the body. So just want you to put your hand on your chest and one between your bottom of your rib basket and your belly button. And you'll take a few breaths in and out through your nose, if you will. And you're tracking a couple of things. You're tracking the effort it takes to breathe in and out of your nose. And you're tracking your nervous system's ability to either be relaxed or activated. Relaxed is down at the 0 number, and activated is up at the 10 number. And what's moving first when you breathe in and out through your nose? Your bottom hand or your top hand? And then when you really have when you've registered that, go ahead and take a couple of breaths through your mouth and watch those 3 things: effort, nervous system, and activation of the nervous system, and which hand moves first. You can go back and forth until you get a feel for it. You go back to nose breathing, see what that brings you when you're ready. When you feel like you've got your answers, just let your eyes drift open. I know everybody's done. So the usual is breathing moves through the chest. Nervous system feels a little bit more active. And effort could be the same or even easier. If some people breathe through their mouth, they feel like it's easier than breathing through the nose. But mostly we're concerned about the activation of the nervous system and chest as opposed to using the diaphragm from below. Is that pretty much your experience, or somebody have a different one? Yeah, Louise says yes. Irene, you're on board with that? Jamie? Pretty much. Laura? Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about posture, and wanted to talk just a little bit about proning. So why are they had Laura, you heard me say this before. Yeah, Jamie, please.
Quickly, so breathing in through the nose. Can you say a little bit about the combination of breathing in through the nose and breathing out through the mouth?
Yeah, I think I don't know, the reason I think it became popular, especially in the exercise world, is that taking that big breath out through the mouth made more room for the inhale. So you could take more room for the inhale. The concern that Buteyko uses, or the principle we use, most people, unless they have a breathing dysfunction in their lungs like pulmonary fibrosis or pneumonia or cystic fibrosis, everybody gets enough air. The question is, can I move that air from my red blood cells to the cells? Mm-hmm. So if I had you on a capnometer and I had you take 3 breaths out through your nose, 3 breaths out through your mouth, I could show you that there was a 14% decrease in the flow of oxygen to the cells. Every 1% decrease in the standard on what the brain stem sets it at is a 2% decrease in the flow of oxygen. 3 big breaths out through the mouth is a 7% decrease in carbon dioxide, which means 14% decrease in the flow of oxygen out of the red blood cells.
And is the same true, because I know you've been talking about big breaths and exercise, and how about a slow, sustained, easy exhale? I'm just.
No, I know. You know, one of the things that I'm forgiving him for my Buteyko practice is pursed lip breathing. Because that's pursed lip breathing. With your lips kind of pursed.
Yeah.
To build some back pressure for people who have emphysema and COPD, where the elasticity of the lungs is decreased because of the overinflation from those diseases.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, I'm not a proponent of breathing out through your mouth, even in the slow exhale.
Okay, it's interesting, especially with the whole continuum influence in your work, and so I just
sounding,
I think of things like the Taoist, like Montauk Shias, the Taoist healing sound. So that's why I'm kind of in this inquiry.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question in a different way, Jamie. That my Buteyko practice is about how to get by in the everyday world. And yoga has 3,000 different breaths, right? I'm not going up against 5,000 years of experimentation about that. But just walking around in the world and every day, it's, for our purposes here, better to breathe in and out through the nose. Okay. You got a special practice that helps bring more energy or more meditative sense into the body by using a slow exhale from the mouth, that might work for that particular thing. I'm more interested in the balance of the chemistry in the body.
Got it.
And so I'd be very fascinated to put somebody on a capnometer who has that practice and then watch what happens. It's real easy to find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I have a quick question.
Sure, Laura.
So is it better when you're yawning then to breathe out through your nose, the whole time?
No,
in and out?
When you're yawning, if you can, it'd be good to learn how to sort of do that kind of facial thing where you kind of yawn and let your face do what it's doing, but not breathing out through your mouth. And I put it, instead of being real strict about it, I do the exercise mini pause, how to recover from a yawn. Yawning is something that happens when the body wants to relax, because usually when it's been tense, it hasn't been getting enough oxygen. So here comes a relaxation and you start to yawn. It's like, okay, I'm letting my body settle down. And maybe I'm taking a bigger breath right now because I need more oxygen right at that particular moment to replace what I haven't been getting. So that's okay. But there are people who come to me who yawn all day long. And that's where they get into trouble, is constantly yawning. Then that's hyperventilating. That's just another way to hyperventilate. So occasionally yawn here and there. I yawn, it's fine. As long as you go back to your nose breathing afterwards, you'll recover. The recovery rate for giving away too much CO2 and then coming back to normal levels is only a couple of breaths, as long as you don't perpetuate behavior on and ongoing.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So proning on the stomach, so I told, the thing that was most amazing to me and what the doctors blew the doctors away, they had a man come in who had a 40 saturation of oxygen in his blood. In other words, he had very little oxygen in his blood. He should have been dead. They get concerned when somebody goes below 90. And they put him on his belly, and in 1 minute, he had his saturation level back to 95. So they just were stunned by that and started reporting that information out into the world. A couple of things that it does. One is that it limits the ability of the lungs to open up in the front. Because a lot of times people look for air here. Try to get here. There's lung here, but more of lung is in the back than in the front. So putting people on their stomach, even in sleeping, compresses the front and drives the air into the back of the lungs, where there is more space to breathe into. And most of COVID has been happening in the front, there's where people feel it all. So they're trying to get them to recruit the back of the lungs and especially the lower back of the lungs. And so now they're putting on people on their stomachs for about 8 hours, and it's really helping people stay off the ventilator. And when they're not on their stomach, if it's too much on their back, then on their necks, then they side sleep when resting. So that also is better than being on your back. Back sleeping with legs straight out, reduce your lung capacity by 40%. Two reasons for that. One is your back is being compressed into the bed. Now you can't open your back body as much. And the other is that when your legs are straight out and your back on your bed, when you're lying on your back with your legs straight out, your viscera, your liver and your stomach and your intestines moves towards the diaphragm. And so it limits the movement of the diaphragm. And when you lift your legs, like this picture shows here, to a 45-degree angle, then the liver and the stomach and the intestine move towards the pelvis, and you gain back 30 of that 40% from lying on your back. So if you have to lie on your back, then at least put your legs up over a pillow or over a bolster a little bit till you feel the ease of movement in your diaphragm that it's not being compressed by your stomach's viscera, your abdominopelvic viscera. But I would say if I had COVID right now, I would not be on my back at all. I just want that back of my lungs to be as open as possible. And the little girl on the left with the balloon coming out of her head, that's the horse rider position in Pateco, where your legs are a little wider than your shoulder width, and it puts your back in a straight position without having to be in your back. Not, not you are in your back, but without having to lift up, stand tall. You are resting on the chair with your feet on the floor. You're on your sit bone mostly. Hands can be resting by your sides or on your legs. And the way to find the best position for that is to lean a little forward and feel when you start to put pressure into your legs to keep you from falling over. And bend back a little bit and notice how your thighs grab so you won't fall backwards. Until you find yourself, oh, there's neutral. And you kind of notice your body sort of relaxes onto the chair a little bit more. Some of that upper body tension reduces. And you can do the same thing side to side until you find neutral. And always with breathing, when it has less tension, inhale and exhale become a lot easier. So a friend of mine coined this term that breathing and breath are a second opinion when you're trying to find ease and rest. Can you guys get that? Can you feel that when you kind of land in neutral, breathing gets easier? Yeah, so you want the least amount of airway resistance you can get to fill up those lungs to capacity. And so when you're resting like that, what you're counting on here is that there is support underneath you. That you don't have to hold yourself up all by yourself, that the chair is coming up to meet you. You're not falling through the floor. Your feet are on the floor, flat on the floor. And they're also being held by the floor. And so as we exhale, our body's weight gets more obvious to us. And so we can allow our weight to be even held more securely. And so when we breathe in, we keep an awareness of that support of the earth through the chair. And we're aware of where we're grounded, breath rises from deeper within and from support. All bodies like support. And that inhale is the second force of gravity. First force of gravity is the downward pull when we're exhaling. And the upward lift of gravity shows itself in the inhale. we feel more buoyant. We feel like we're moving up. And when we exhale, we feel like we're moving down. And I notice when I exhale, there goes a little tension released from my shoulder blades. And so rather than my thinking about breathing correctly, I'm just following the movement of my body through the cycle of inhale and exhale. And the movement of my body through those cycles is a biological process. So I try not to evaluate whether it's right or wrong, but just enjoy the movement that breath provides, because that's the relationship between my breath and my body. Air comes in, my body moves. Air goes out, my body moves. It's an opening and a closing. Lungs open on the inhale, and their natural elasticity closes them on the exhale. I love the support that I feel from the earth. And when I can receive that support, I can rest into it. That's how I rest. It's not an abstraction rest. It's about the body really letting go of its tension to be held. Okay. I'll give you the next piece of that. Was that nice for you, Irene? Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to say? Yeah, nice smile on you, Louise. It must have worked for you. Okay. And Jamie, anything you want to add? Because you've been doing this for a while too. No? Okay. So let's look at the placement of the tongue. This is sort of a new development in our breathing world from the orofacial myofunctional people. That started in Brazil actually, and it's now moved up here. It's a college level, graduate level class in Brazil, but here we have private institutions teaching this work right now. And so the idea here is that, you know, as a child in development, the tongue is meant to be at the roof of the mouth in between the teeth to keep the mouth and face wide as it spreads. And so as an adult, if we haven't done that all our life, it's not as easy to get up there, but it's worth the try just to learn how to keep the tongue at the roof of the mouth. So in this picture here, what we're looking at here is that the teeth are slightly touching, maybe a millimeter or two apart. The lips are lightly sealed, and the tongue, this is the pink part here that matches Louise's shirt, is up. This is the roof of the mouth here, this part, hard palate, and this is the nose. So the hard palate is both the floor of the nose and the roof of the mouth. And so the tongue is curled right all the way back, not pointing up, and it's not right behind the teeth. It's at that first little ledge that you feel in your palate. And if you want to feel what it feels like to have your tongue back that far, you want to say the syllable ack, A-C-K, ack. And you can feel the tongue move up towards the back teeth when you say ack. And so then you want to get your tongue resting there, because look at the airway size here. Sure, it's a drawing, but it makes the point. Nice open airway here. And when the tongue is down from the roof of the mouth and the floor of the nose, the airway gets much smaller. So it's really good to have an experience of this. So I want to just play with that for a moment as you breathe through your nose, just a minute or two. See if you can curl your tongue up at the roof of the mouth. And feel through the throat, because the tongue starts here, what that flow of air is like. And it's not a pressing up there, it's just a resting in that position if you can, and as much as you can. And then drop the tongue down to the floor of the mouth. And just notice the effort of breathing through your throat. I notice just a little bit increase in tension in my throat. And there are other side benefits. Part of it for me, it feels like my head rests a little bit easier when my tongue is up there. The back of my skull is a little softer and a little more movable. I feel a little more connected to myself when my tongue is up there. Because in Taoist practice, it's hooking up the microcosmic circuit. I feel a little disconnected when I drop my tongue down. A little bit removed from my senses. My tongue's up there, I'm a little more acute in my senses. Louise.
So when you say that, do you mean the tip of your tongue or like the whole top of your tongue against the roof of your mouth?
If you can get it there, the whole, see this pink piece here? See how it's curled there? That's the tongue. That's the way it's supposed to be.
I feel like that's what my tongue naturally does.
Congratulations, that's great. And I can tell that too, Louise, by the shape of your face. No, seriously.
Why?
Because if you have your tongue there, it widens the face. It keeps the face widened, keeps the airways. Because when people face narrows, like I was a mouth breather, so you can see the narrowness in my face here. And so my palate is raised because the teeth came together. So, and that palate, when it's raised, where's it going? It's going into my nose. So it reduces the airspace.
But I also feel that the front of the tip of my tongue is resting against the back of my teeth.
Uh-huh.
Is that okay, or do you want it further back?
You know, it's hard. You have to kind of feel for yourself where that first ridge is and how close to the back of the teeth it is. If it's curled up there, I just leave it alone the way it is.
Okay.
Can you tell the difference when you drop it down that it's not as easy to breathe?
It doesn't feel natural at all to me.
Yeah.
When it's dropped down.
Great. Yeah, Irene.
That's a classic Qigong position.
Is it?
Yeah, right at the roof of the mouth there.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, like I said, in the Taoist practice, it's so it's got to be all the way through all those practices. Laura?
So I notice, when I'm putting my tongue up there more, the floor of my mouth feels like it starts to get sore, like muscles are working more than they're used to doing.
Right, and were you on that call? Were you on that call that the day that the oral facial person? What you meant? Yeah, she said. So you have to really get trained to not strain that.
Right.
Because if you have a short frenulum, then it becomes more of a struggle. So it takes some training. But is your mouth closed and your teeth touching when you do that? So you limit the space, or is your mouth open?
My mouth is closed. I'm not clenching, like touching my teeth, like biting something. But I just have to keep playing around with finding that ideal spot so that I don't feel like everything is getting strained.
Yeah, for me, I'm not as much focused on the front of my tongue as much as the back of my tongue.
Oh, okay.
Lifting the back up towards the top of my, the soft palate.
Okay.
And that reduces the tension in the front.
Okay, I'll try and pay attention to that and make it easier.
And it gives me more of a sense of having a head up here in the front. It puts me this way, but when I go to the back, it's like, oh, it's a sphere. I have more of a spherical sense of my head.
Oh, okay, great.
All right.
Thank
Sure. All right, so here's what happens if you get a stuffy nose. There's a nose clearing exercise. Laura, have you been practicing with this one?
I need to do this one.
Yeah, I know. I can tell a little bit. So this is a nose clearing exercise. If your nose is stuffed and you want to get it clear, this is a way to get it clear. So you take a breath in. Mostly what we're basically doing is this: taking a breath in, taking a breath out, pinching our nose, and then bobbing our head for 6 to 10 times if we have any compromise in our body, or until we feel like we need to take a slight inhale, when we feel like there's a slight urge for breathing. We keep our mouth closed. The instructions are for helping people get into the rhythm of bobbing their head. So you breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, hold, and bob. If you can hold it till you feel a slight urge to breathe, and then breathe really gently back through your nose as if you're smelling a rose. And repeating it until the airways open. You're sending a signal to the epithelial tissues in the nose that you're slowing down. You're producing some carbon dioxide in the area, which helps to vasodilate the blood vessels and take away the stuffiness, and so that the nose can withdraw some of the mucus back into the membrane. If you feel, yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Sorry. What happens if you don't have a stuffy nose?
Then don't do it.
So it's not something you want to just do to practice.
No,
it's
it's
just,
only if you like let's say you get a cold, or you're not feeling well, or you've been mouth breathing a while and you got a stuffy nose and you think this is really uncomfortable. I'd rather be nose breathing than mouth breathing. So you have to get that nose open. You do this. And if your neck is not in a place where you want to do that, you can just stamp your feet a little bit or walk and do it. So you get up, breathe in, breathe out, hold your nose, walk around the room. And the key here is, I say 6 to 10 times is a precautionary measure for anybody who has any heart issues. Because holding your breath when you have a heart issue can raise your blood pressure and cause some strain. If you're healthy in your heart, and you're not stressed in your other organs, you want to hold this until you feel a slight urge to breathe. So that when you let go of your nose and you breathe back, it's this. Not like that, right? Because as soon as you do that, it's going to stuff up again. Because the nose is the guardian of the lungs, it doesn't want a lot of force in it. So the example is to use it as you're smelling a rose, because those of you who smelled a rose, sometimes it's a really subtle odor coming off a rose, a smell. So you want to be really careful to let that air circulate while you're smelling the rose. Same thing here.
okay. Thank you.
Is that working for you, Jamie?
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of guiding me into a different kind of exploration,
Okay.
But the essential, just to make sure I'm on the right page. So it's the exhale, you finally exhale, and then you hold the nose.
Right. So yeah, anything in particular that I teach is always after the exhale.
Always the exhale. Okay. Yeah, kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. And then it actually works, which is even better. Okay. So talking, that's one of the places that everybody gives away into hyperventilating. And so I'm trying to practice as best I can here with you all that when I talk, I am exhaling, no question about it. But do I want to trigger my fight or flight by breathing back through my mouth? No. I want to take a break, be quiet for a moment, breathe back through my nose so that I keep myself settled and quiet inside of myself. And the thing that I like about it, because like I spoke earlier when we were being quiet, I like paying attention to the relationship between how when I breathe, my body moves. And so when I'm doing that, when I stop talking to you, where is my attention? My attention is on my experience. And so I'm taking a break from my relationship to you to be in my experience. And then when I come back to talk to you, I'm back in relationship with you. So I'm not overexerting myself to always be focusing outward, 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 outward. And for the listener, it gives you a time to listen and integrate what I just said. So I think it's a much more peaceful way of carrying on a conversation. And I do notice that I really feel much more settled when I teach this way and practice it completely. And so a good way to learn how to do it is by reading a book aloud and paying attention to commas and periods. And since each new breath is a new life being created and manifest, when I come back to talk to you, each new sentence is a brand new in creation in this moment. I'm not trying to tag it on to the last thing I said. The emphasis is on starting again. And the same thing is true with reading. And when I stop for a period, I don't have to worry about whether the next sentence connects to the last sentence. I'm starting again. It's a very powerful way to stay connected to yourself in the world and feel easy in your conversations. But from having taught this for so long, I know that most women tell me, well, if I take that kind of break, I will get interrupted. And so, as my wife has so graciously taught me, I'm not done talking, Robert. Oh, okay. My bad. So, and oftentimes what I think I have to say doesn't turn out to what really needs to be said at the end of the conversation anyway. Okay. So I wanted to show this picture of the lungs to get people to see, whoever looks at this, see how large they are. They're really big. This person has their arms raised, but the lungs are above the clavicles. They're up in here, way up here. You can feel them when you breathe. You put your hand here and take a full breath. You'll feel movement up there. And they come all the way down. This is the front of the body here, at the bottom of the rib basket where you feel them. But you see how they go down at the back as the back ribs go down further than the front ribs. And this space in here is the potential space for the lungs to open up into. And that's the part that the doctors and nurses are trying to get people to recruit while they breathe, so they have more capacity. I want to use this capacity, because most people shallow breathe. Most people hold their breath a lot and don't really use its full potential. So if you even just think about the back of your body, just bring your back of your body into awareness, you'll feel movement back there. Because breath follows awareness. Louise.
I wonder if that's part of the reason that people who are overweight are more are in more danger to not surviving COVID.
Yeah, yes.
There's too much in the way there.
There's too much airway resistance from the weight, number one. Number two, the diaphragm is pushing way up against the lungs. They can't get a deep breath.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely one of the reasons. Just read an article about it today, but it's definitely one of the reasons. Mm-hmm. They're more susceptible to getting critically ill. Like the average ventilating population is 46% get ventilated. The population of people who are obese, it's 88% need to be ventilated. Can't get that breath. All right, so this is one of my favorite exercises. This is an old, comes out of a Yoga Sutra from 5,000 years old. And I love it because it really reduces airway resistance. It allows you to both let your lungs be in charge of your breathing and opening, as well as it gives you the potential to slow your breath down and to continue to fill to full capacity without a whole lot of effort. So if I take a deep breath like this, right away I can feel everything tightening in here. So I'm not going to get the breath I need if I try to take a big breath like that. But if I think the syllable sa on the inhale, just think it, because when I think it, I'll hear it. I will probably notice, is what I notice, I'll report, my lungs opening from the inside out. I'm not trying to pull them open, they're opening. And if I say ha, think ha on the way out, I don't have to put any energy, I just think it. On exhaling, my lungs will squeeze the air out along with the diaphragm. So one of the things that I've been focusing on with COVID is if I elongate my thinking of sa, like sa in my thinking, breath comes in slower, easier, and I can extend that inhale until I'm really filled up. And I don't feel the normal constriction I would feel if I try to take a big breath in like this. Is too much resistance. But if I just elongate sa, and then the ha even takes longer, my lungs have been more full, much longer exhale, and I'm waiting for the end of that exhale before I feel that impulse for the next inhale. And I can control the speed of that inhale by how I think sa. And so we can combine this with the whole idea of when I'm breathing out with ha, I'm returning to support of gravity. I'm aware of how my weight lands on the floor in the chair. So when I breathe in, I keep aware of my support. So I'm breathing with support. And I can open a lot easier with less resistance. And I just keep also following the movement because the movement is nourishing. That's one of the important parts of breathing is the nourishment of movement. And so this is a good practice. This is what I teach my Bateco clients to play with this 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time throughout the day. First of all, to get used to learning how to let the lungs breathe you where you don't even have to think sa anymore. You just breathe from this place that sort of, for me, frees up the diaphragm, let the lungs do the work they want to do, the diaphragm moving down, belly soft. And much less resistance to the inflow of air. So I can recruit as much of my lung capacity as I need to here without being in a lot of stress to do it. So this is what it means to breathe easy with support. As every basketball player knows, to take a jump shot, you got to go down to go up. It's the same thing with breath. Go down in the exhale to rise up in the inhale. All right, is that making itself known to you? I love it. It's my favorite thing, and most people find it really useful. Jamie, is that something you knew about?
I was exposed to this before, but not in thinking of actually using this as a stabilizing device for the breath.
And you feel it that way, it stabilizes you? Yeah, great. Good, thank you. It's good to have you on the line. So the nitric oxide issue, the studies that they did to show its antiviral effects was humming for 20 minutes, increased the nitric oxide production from 7 to 15 times. It's quite a lot. So I know that if I was not feeling well, I'd be humming all day long to get that nitric oxide, because it is anti-inflammatory and it does have antiviral effects. And one of the major things about this particular disease is the inflammation that it causes. If you wanted to use it to end stuffy nose, the studies they did, they had clients, one particular person do it for an hour before they went to bed. And in 4 days, they disappeared their stuffy nose forever. So any tune, in any way, walking, doing whatever you're doing, just hum a tune. Not something that's been talked about in the hospitals so much, but definitely has been studied. Now this exercise, I'm not saying that it would, it's like I have a client right now who has bronchiectasis who makes a lot of mucus in their lungs. That's what that disease does. And so they wouldn't do this because they need to cough a lot. But if you find you're being tickled a lot by your allergies and you find yourself coughing and you feel like it's too much hyperventilating, you can try this stop cough exercise where you put your hand over your mouth, swallow, take small breaths so you don't trigger that cough reflex. Then at the end of the exhale, hold your breath for a few seconds. Breathe in and out slowly and smoothly for 30 seconds. And try a psychological approach to tell yourself you're not going to cough, and then go back to normal nose breathing. Sometimes a tickle can just drive you crazy. Okay, you'll get a copy of this too. So this is a very important exercise from Buteyko, and it's called a mini pause. And so let's go to the bottom line first. If you're feeling ill, you want to do this 100 times an hour, 3 times a day. If any symptoms start to show, and basically what you're doing is you're breathing in and out through your nose, and then you're taking a suspension of your breath before you breathe back in after your exhale for 3 to 5 seconds. So you use it after you've coughed, after you've sneezed, after you've yawned, after you sighed. Any of those things that I mentioned there are a little bit of dissipation of the carbon dioxide. A little bit of pause at the end of this mini pause brings back that carbon dioxide that you lost from the coughing or the other 3 things. You can use it before bedtime, one a minute for 10 to 15 minutes before you go to sleep to reduce nighttime stuffiness and help relax the system. But particularly if you're feeling not well, this boosting of your immune system through increasing your CO2 levels is a very powerful resource to help ward off illness as it's arriving. And you can do this one of 2 ways, or many ways. Some people take toothpicks, put them on the left side. Every time you do one, you move one to the right side. When you finish 100, you know you did them all. Or I usually do one every 3rd breath, which in about an hour, I do 100. I don't like to count, so I just, breathe in, do a mini pause, take 2 normal breaths, do it again, take 2 normal breaths, do it again. And it works. It really wards off sore throats and oncoming colds. It gives a real boost to the immune system. Okay. Sure, Louise.
You pause on the exhale?
After the exhale, right. You don't extend your exhale like, make your exhale last forever on purpose, but you just, whatever a normal exhale is for you, and you finish it, suspend your breathing for 3 to 5 seconds and take a normal breath in through your nose. See, what I liked about Saha is it's really taught me how to let my lungs do the breathing. I don't have to think it anymore, say it anymore. It's just, I know how to switch from being willful out here to just letting my body breathe me. Okay. So this is something, yeah, sure, Irene.
So you're just talking about you breathe in, you breathe out through your nose, and then you just 1, 2, 3, suspend your breathing, breathe in, breathe out.
That's right. Real simple. 3 to 5 seconds.
So you just pause for 3 to 5 seconds, and then you do it again in 3 breaths.
And you do it 100 for an hour.
So you do it as many as 1 to 10-minute intervals during an hour.
Okay, there's 2 parts. Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. There's 2 parts here. This is the top part. This is to reduce nighttime stuffiness and to boost your immune system just occasionally. Down here at the bottom, if you're starting to feel not well, then you do them 100 in an hour, 3 times a day.
Okay, great. Thank you for repeating that. I lost my internet connection and was gone for a second there.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Good. So yeah, breathing is a habit. And so then mouth breathing is a habit. And we do it for certain times, for certain reasons. We don't know what it is, but we want to stop the habit. So it's good to make a list of when you noticed you used your mouth for breathing, so that when you're about to go do that particular thing again, you go, whoa, wait a minute, I made a list. This is the thing that I usually open my mouth when I do that. And Laura heard me say this in the last time I talked. I opened my mouth when I went to the mailbox. I had a fear of mailboxes, so I breathed when I went. Jamie shaking his head. It's not an uncommon thing. And the other one was when I opened my car door after driving, I opened my mouth to breathe. I don't know, but I had to break both of those habits. And then there's the shower, of course. And I was in my class in New Zealand and learning Bateko. And I said, but I can't wash my hair and the soap's coming down and I can't mouth breathe. I can't nose breathe. She said, well, why don't you turn around and put your head to the back of the shower? I thought, okay, that's a simple solution. Probably every woman knows because they would get their hair washed back there. You wash from the back, not from the front. Right? Okay, so anyway, so you make a list. It's good. Just keep it around and you'll know and you'll start breaking that habit. And it'll take a moment. Notice, wait a minute. This is the thing where I always mouth breathe. Let me take a moment. Set myself up for nose breathing. Maybe saha in that moment. Okay, settle down. Whatever was making me mouth breathe, maybe a little anxiety for some reason. And I go about my business doing my nose breathing. Right, Laura? All right. So I said, practice quiet breathing for 60 minutes a day, if you can, 5 and 10-minute increments. Learn the difference between being quiet in your breathing and over-breathing and anxious in your breathing. By practicing, you go, oh, this is a nice state. And then when I'm not in that state, whoa, wait a minute, I'm out of that state and I'm rushing around and being a little activated. I just close my mouth and breathe through my nose, maybe I'm pretty making sure my tongue is in the right place. I'm taking a breath and it resets me pretty quickly and puts me back in the mode. So I like telling this story that I got from Ram Dass, for those of you who know Ram Dass, one of his books. It tells the story of the 92-year-old Aikido master. Did I tell this story, Laura, that day that you were on? So 92-year-old Aikido master, and he nobody can beat him, right? It's just all his young students, they can't beat him. So they decide one night they're going to wait for him in the bathroom in the middle of the night because he's 92 years old and he gets up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. So he gets up that night, he goes to the bathroom, he's standing at the urinal, all his students come out of the stalls, they jump him and he beats every one of them. And they go, Master, how is it you can be on center all the time? He says, oh, I'm not on center all the time. I just know how to get there really quickly. And so the same thing is true here. If I find myself breathing in a way that I know is debilitating me, I just go, oh, there I am. I'm back. And then I keep breathing that pattern. So the more you practice it, the more you'll understand how to get there. As an asthmatic, I know this really well. That I can feel, and most asthmatics will tell you this. They know the breath that's coming that says, this is asthmatic breath. If I keep on breathing this way, I'm going to have an asthmatic attack. And so from learning this, I know that breath comes. I go, oh, wait a minute. Just change the frequency of my breathing. And it just goes away. It's not heading in that direction. So, and if you're breathing at night, then this is a Buteyko technique of taping your mouth at night. Some of you may have seen this before. And this is paper tape. This is a 1/2 inch roll. It comes in 3/4 inch and 1 inch in the CVS or Walgreens. You never want to buy CVS or Walgreens brands. You want to buy either name brand because they have better glue. They cheapen out the glue with the other one. This is 3M, made by 3M. I buy them on Amazon. They're 37 cents a roll on Amazon. They're $4 and $5 in the store. So what you do is you take a piece and you bend over an end so there's a place that's not sticky, right? So you can get to it. You can wear, if this is especially if you breathe through your mouth at night, you can start off by using a small piece. You can graduate to diagonal or 2 diagonals, but eventually you want to get to here if you're a mouth breather at night, because you're sleeping in fight or flight if you're a mouth breather at night. And in the morning, you either take it off really gently or push it off with your tongue, wet it with your tongue and push it off because it can tear your skin. The lips are a little tender up there, it can tear your skin. But if you're dry mouthed in the morning, you got your mouth open at night. It's the easiest way to tell. If you don't, if your mouth is nice and wet in the morning, then you probably aren't a mouth breather at night. But this can really teach you a new habit. Buteyko says about 6 months. I've been doing it I'm a very slow learner. I've been doing it for 17 years. Yeah. Laura, what?
Oh no, I forgot what I was going to say. So would you be waking up then a whole bunch at night if you tried this tape thing for the first time? If you are a mouth breather, I'm not sure if I am. I have to.
You might. It might feel uncomfortable. What I would suggest to try is, take it during the day. You're doing some quiet activity like reading. Try it. Washing the dishes, watching television, see how it feels. If it keeps you awake, then take it off. Just try it for an hour and then take it off until you get used to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You'll get a much better. I mean, people who have, not always happens this way, but people stop snoring, people stop their sleep apnea. It's a miracle when that happens, but it's not always the case. Yeah, Irene.
You've been doing it for 17 years. What have you noticed? I mean, do you
17 years
sometimes not
old.
do it and notice something different, or?
I think I'm still 17 years older. But no, when I first started wearing it, I could really tell. I mean, I was panting under it at the beginning. It just keeps me quietly sleeping. I've tried it without sleeping, of course, without it. And mostly what happens is I go most of the night, but towards the morning, I start to notice I open my mouth. And I don't do it for naps. My mouth stays closed. So it just keeps me more restful at night. And I don't know, I've just gotten into the habit so much that it feels like it's like, turn out the lights, tape your mouth. I mean, I don't know, it's just gotten into that habit. And at 37 cents a roll, it's not a big expense. But definitely keeps me quieter in my sleep and more rested. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is an interesting thing that just came across the web the other day, and I've been trying it. Present moment awareness is a central experience, and what a central experience means we're in our senses. So it's just an easy way to get out of our heads, and it's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. And I really like it. It's, noticing 5 things through my visual field, 4 different sounds, 3 different touches, including my breath, 2 smells, and 1 taste. And it brings me back into my senses. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I just offer it for people who are just in their heads all the time and want a way to get out. I find as soon as I put my tongue up there and do saha and feel my breath, I'm back in present moment awareness. But I just like this idea. And this one I'm borrowing from Dr. Breath, Carl Stow. I don't know if you know him. And Jamie, do you know him? Yeah, he was great. He was great. He was a choir director and a singing coach in New York, and he became famous for taking people off the street, teaching them how to breathe, and then teaching them how to sing, and doing amateur concerts in Carnegie Hall with complete amateurs. He also went to the 1968 Olympics and trained the U.S. track team on how to breathe properly through the back, all the way through their nose and through down at the bottom of their lungs, and that's how they won so many medals in 1968. And what he basically was after is how to strengthen the diaphragm. Well, the diaphragm's a muscle. So if you use the muscle, you strengthen it. So he used it through voice. And so this is what he did. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathing easily back in with sa and ha. And then repeat. And you can feel the strengthening right in the diaphragm. Jamie's trying it. And you want to do it verbally, out loud. And you'll just notice, I mean, and it's really simple because if you start off and you can only do it 3 or 4 times, you practice it a couple of times a day, a couple of weeks, you'll start, oh, I'm up to 6 times, I'm up to 7 times. So you had a huge success in taking veterans out of World War II who came out off the Navy, especially with asbestos poisoning and emphysema, and really helping them regain stability, put on weight again, being able to breathe again. And it's just a very clever, simple man. And the other piece that he did, which is what we're trying to do here with gravity, is he massaged them, take the tension out. When the tension's out, you can breathe better. So right now, without movement or anything else, just letting your body soften back into gravity and then breathing with support, let some of the tension come out. And you'll notice probably when you let some of the tension come out that you're always letting it out of the same places. Well, that's your tension pattern. Then you learn how you hold tension. You can begin to work with that. So very cool. Jamie, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was fun doing that along with you because it reminded me of people that chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I mean, like Tina Turner, right? I mean, that was kind of her liberation pathway. So I was just kind of thinking about that in terms of the strengthening of the diaphragm and just the strengthening really of will in a way. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was the first one. I don't know how he got about it. I never did hear that story. I had videotape of it, of doing moving x-rays, video x-rays of the diaphragm in motion. And he showed with emphysema patients, they had holes in their diaphragm, that the muscle got so thin from the emphysema and from the struggling of breath and breathing from the chest only and no use of the diaphragm, that it atrophied and it got really thin in places. And so then he was able to very simply rebuild them through singing. After they did this practice, then he had them sing as well. And then went back in and looked at those videotapes, x-rays of their diaphragm, and found it all, built up muscularly again and no more holes in it. So really simple idea and very effective, and one they've been using chanting for eons, right? To keep the breathing healthy, right? Totally makes sense. Okay, so this is a nice remedy too if you're not feeling well. It's when I heard about it when I first trained, I thought, oh well, okay. And then when I didn't feel well and I tried it, yeah, 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, not iodized, more likely Himalayan salt now, but I don't know if you can get clear salt anymore. In hot water as the medicine 2 or 3 times a day. It's the minerals that really reestablish some homeodynamic balance in the body. And how I went about this and really mostly taught my clients and students, if you feel like you need it, you'll drink it. If you don't feel like you need it, I mean, if the idea of drinking it feels like, then you probably don't need it. But if it's like, oh, I'm going to give it a try, you probably need it. So it's really a good remedy. It really works. And since we're dealing with air pollution when people come back and what's in the air, it's also probably a good idea to do some nasal washing. Our nose is a filter. You do need to clean the filter. So, a little bit of salt and baking soda, little packets, you know, neti pot if your nose is not stuffed, or just put your hands under the water. A couple of people over the time on these lectures have said they didn't really like the squeeze bottle. It felt too soft, too forceful. So just a neti pot or just your hands. So I've been saying this for a while, and now it's getting a popular read by the doctors. Everybody should have a pulse oximeter in their house, especially with COVID, because what's happening now is people are going along, they feel really sick, they feel sick, and all of a sudden they don't, and they can't breathe, and they go to the doctor, and they're in critical care. So a pulse oximeter is reading your saturation levels, and so if you are ill, you want to keep real close tabs of both your breathing rate and your CO and your O2 saturation level. If it starts to drop below 90, you want to get to the doctor immediately. Don't wait any longer. You want to keep checking that. That means that your body is not, your blood is no longer receiving the oxygen it needs. Your lungs are really congested at that point. You've got pneumonia at that point. So you really want to make real good care frequently. It's like taking your temperature frequently if you feel like you're getting sick. And they're not expensive now, $20 or $30. I think that you can get them for. They absolutely should be in everybody's household. They're finding if they can catch this quicker with patients, they don't have to go on ventilators. So this is something that came through the other day. I really haven't worked with it that much, but it came from the Breathing Association about what we're looking at here. And I thought that the interesting thing that I think we have to pay attention to is this wave here, the fourth wave, that I think we're going to be looking at a lot of stress and a lot of psychological trauma from what happened here. Loss of family members, loss of income, loss of work, loss of being able to feed your family. 1 in 5 children don't have enough food in the United States right now. And, you know, over here, interruption of care for the chronically ill is also another wave. But I'm really concerned about this one. I think personally, just my own particular, that when this is over, we should have a global grief time for everybody to really grieve, because grief is held in the lungs, and if we could get our lungs clear of all that loss and sorrow that we're all suffering from and fear, we might work out of this better. But if it all gets hidden under the table, we're going to be in trouble. All right, so just a little bit about Irene.
To back up a second with the neti pot and the nasal wash, were you saying that you should do a nasal wash twice a day even if you're not having any symptoms?
I think so. I mean, I know when I lived in New York, man, the inside of my nose was black. And when I started, I remember very specifically and succinctly when I moved to Arizona in 1971 and drove across the country, I noticed that the further west I got, the less black my nose was when I blew my nose. And so one of the things that made me really even think about this more is that Delhi is probably one of the most dirty cities in the world. And so right now, what's popular in Delhi is people are inserting filters in their noses to filter to extra add filter to the nose. And after 1 hour, they're black. So, washing the nose out, just, blowing the nose, getting that stuff out of your nose.
Don't you worry about traumatically interfering with the functions of the epithelium cells, and then in terms of producing those antibacterial molecules and stuff?
Well, somebody asked me that, and then another person had the answer for that, and they said that it is a salty environment already. So you are just really, it's not going to endanger that. That's all I know, what people told me. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it endlessly, but they've been doing it in India forever. Part of what people find disturbing is the burning of the salt. And so that's why there are little packets out there where you put baking soda in with it, or baking powder. And so it kind of takes down the burn a little bit. But no, I don't think so. I think the epithelial lining will restore pretty quickly.
So where you live right now on Vashon Island, are you doing that twice a day?
I do this. And the air is really clean right now here.
Now, when you do that, you're 5 times you're splashing
No,
water.
Thank you for the question. I'm taking it in my hands. I'm, drawing it up. I mean, I'm sniffing in a little bit. You know, then I take a Kleenex and blow out a little bit, and then do it again and clean it up. And it seems to be pretty clean right now.
Okay. So you're just kind of like holding water there and just
Yeah,
kind
like
of,
this picture on the right.
okay, got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I have a neti pot.
Okay.
And I've
Okay.
used them quite frequently. Yeah. The thing about what happened with neti pots too is in the South, there's a lot more bacteria in the water in the South. So people were getting bacterial infections from using the neti pot. And so then the warning came up to use distilled and sterilized water for a neti pot.
Okay. And what about the use of the plastic bottles that people use for
The
nasal?
last time I was on, or the time before that, somebody who was, I don't know what field they were in, said that they felt like that was, oh yeah, it was an osteopath, way too forceful, too much pressure up in
That's
there.
what I heard recently too, is that
Yeah,
there's
too
too
much
much
pressure.
squeezing with that in the neti pot. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So neti pot,
Right,
you're
thank you.
controlling the flow, you know, you're easily controlling the flow. The unfortunate thing about a neti pot is when your nose is really stuffed, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't get through. So then you want a nose clear and then do the neti pot. Okay. So, you know, this came out of, just real quickly, this came out of the fact that we had so much smoke here 2 years ago and we were expecting it again here. So I had N95 masks on hand because I was preparing for smoke. And so probably a lot of people in Vashon did too. But I think everybody should have an air filter in their house and an air monitor. So I put a link on here if you want to read a little bit more about it. They are testing them in terms of the viruses. And they are feeling that, you know, if you keep the filtration high in the house and keep it moving high, you have a better chance of moving that stuff through the filter, which of course you want a HEPA filter for. And for smoke, you need a charcoal filter. You want to, and the home monitors, I have a monitor. I have the one on the left over here. And so it measures the particulate matter. And this is a $300 one. This is a $200 one. They both do an equal job. Both come highly recommended. It tells me what the CO2 levels are in my house, and it tells me what the smoke levels. And so one of the things that really surprised me after buying the monitor is how much cooking destroys the quality of my air. It's almost instantaneous. So that's why if there's smoke outside and you cannot open your windows, you cannot cook in your house if you have sensitive airways. So I like a monitor, and I'm recommending here on Vashon, I'm doing some air quality control for people on Vashon, that the restaurants should have these so they can reassure people when they come in that the air is clean and that do the proper filters. This is a monitor that does VOC, the volatile chemicals, and this one is for radon if you're worried about radon. Yeah, Irene?
I'm sorry, my internet connection cut out again. On the previous slide, what were you recommending for home monitors?
These ones here, you'll get this IQ Air and the Laser Egg.
So either one of those?
Uh-huh.
How expensive are they?
This one is $300. This one is $200. I think you can actually get an earlier model of this of $149, and they do have them for $99. I just recently bought this one for $100 as in addition, because this one does specifically volatile chemicals. And so I'm going to be going around to the restaurants testing their air, so I want them to know what the volatile chemicals are. This other one mostly just does PM25, but if there are chemicals in the air, it will pick them up, and it won't read it out separately. And I want it to read it out separately. So any chemicals that are in the air.
So you believe every house should have an air monitor?
Absolutely. You know, this is a little longer discussion, and we have a few minutes long, but I'll just say it briefly. We don't, whether we recognize it or we don't, Irene, we haven't trusted our produce and our food for a long time, right? That's why we went to organic, right? Then we didn't trust the water anymore, so we went to bottled water. And now we don't trust the air. We really don't. It's polluted. The World Health Organization says specifically air is cancer causing. 9 million people die from it. Now it's got the virus in it. Now they're talking about it's possibly airborne. So underneath all of that, we've destroyed our resources. So I think what we need to have in our house is you know, this is what I recommended here on the island and in this area, was have one room that you prepare as a clean room in your house. It has the proper filters, it's monitored, the windows are sealed. So if smoke comes, you have a room that you can retreat to that's ventilated properly, that's filtered properly, and then you know that the air is clean. Because when the smoke was here, you couldn't see 100 feet in front of you. That's death.
So you're talking about a room that the windows are always sealed on?
No, at night you want the windows wide open. This is when smoke is in the air.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because you sleep in a room with 2 people, the CO2 levels will climb to 2,000 parts per million as a 21 decrease in cognitive function. The normal today in the atmosphere is 418 parts per million. But in a room with 2 people sleeping with the windows closed, it goes to 2,000.
Okay, can you speak a little more? What do you do in that case then? If
Open your windows. You open your windows if there's no smoke outside. If you're going to be in a room that you want to keep clean and need to have ventilated, you have to have an air conditioner that just does recirculating air. So it puts the air outside. You can't bring air in from the outside unless you have a home unit, HVAC, that is properly filtered. You can't bring air in from the outside. It's got smoke in it.
So 2 people in a room and it's too cold to open the window, you need to have something cleaning the air.
Yeah, you have to, not too cold, even too cold. You put more blankets on. You need a window open. You got to have a window open. CO2 levels rise. And if they rise to 1,000, you lose 15% cognitive function. And I watch television with my wife in the living room sometimes, and we haven't opened the window, but an hour or 2 of television, and bingo, those CO2 levels up to 1,000. And we go, oh, no wonder we're groggy. Open the windows.
Okay.
Yeah. So I put another resource on here from Stephen Porges about how to stay close even while social distancing, which is basically use FaceTime, use Zoom, see somebody, don't just text them. And that's me, the Breathable Body. And I'm doing private work with people, teaching them Taiko classes and private sessions if they need it. And I'm working with holistic orthopedics with insurance. And
sorry.
That's okay. I just want to say I put other resources on here for you. A list of 28 reasons to nose breathe, some more resources, some more movement resources, other places to get information, and some stuff from a PT, Postural Restoration Institute, for opening up the lungs. Just easy things to do. Okay, so that's all. I'm going to stop the share, but you'll get all of that in the mail. Okay. Yeah, Laura, you had a question.
So are you going to keep doing classes like this every once in a while on Zoom?
I'm going to keep doing them on, I didn't do them this Sunday because it's Mother's Day. So I'm doing it on Saturday. I don't have anybody signed up for Saturday. And then I'll continue to offer them once a week on Sunday until they just don't seem purpose.
So it'll be different information each time?
Only if information changes out there. I'm going to still offer the same explorations of Saha. And that stuff will stay the same. But if the information changes out there and some of my resources can work better with what's coming through as we develop more information, I'll add that to it. But basically, I'm seeing that it's basically the same each time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in my exploration of, nose breathing, and I feel like I'm yawning more, I just need to pay attention to all that and keep nose breathing, and hopefully the yawning will dissipate over time.
It will, Laura. What's happening is that since you've been using your mouth for breathing a lot, your CO2 levels in the respiratory set point are set at a certain number. As you start to nose breathe, it's pushing that CO2 set point, and the body's going, wait a minute, Laura, you've been at it at this level for so long, let's make you yawn to bring it back to where it was. So by inhibiting that yawn a little bit, not letting you, it's going to push those CO2 levels up, so you'll be able to tolerate the nose breathing a lot better. Yes.
Okay, and I noticed that I do it more at night, probably just have to get more tired too, but.
That's probably true also. Because CO2 does suffocate. That's what's happening to people now with COVID, that they're not able, as the lungs get congested, they're not able to give off the CO2 that they had. So the CO2 levels are rising, and they're starting to feel short of breath because they are really suffocating from too much CO2, and they can't dispel it. So that's why they're getting them to open up their lungs so they can take bigger breaths, so they can get that CO2 out of their bodies as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll just keep at it. Keep on my mouth.
Yeah, and come see me privately if you need to.
Okay. My husband will love that. Yeah, keep your mouth shut, honey.
Boy, do I hear that comment all the time.
I bet. I told him something about the tape. He's like, "Oh, you should have never told me that one. I mean, let's just get a case of it." I'm like,
Well, we'll all hope on the line that he's just kidding.
yeah, yes.
Okay.
I have two questions, or one question and one comment. Between those two air monitors, one being 300, one being 150 to 200, what's your recommendation? Do you recommend just opting for the more expensive one?
I tend to do that. There's a website called smartfilters.com. It's a group in Singapore. That's where some of the dirtiest airs are. And they did the testing on them, and that's the one they recommended, was the $300 one. It seems to have the most versatility.
Worth the output. And
I
the
think
other
so.
comment I wanted to say is I took your class about a month ago, and I've been a meditator for decades. And what I found with the Saha is I got into my meditative state much faster than my usual ability. So
Oh,
the
great.
Saha just took me right there. Really is what I found with the Saha.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it. All right. Anything from you, Louise?
No, this has been really interesting. I have asthma, and so much of what you're saying is intriguing to me. And I have no experience with meditating or being mindful with my breath, but I'm excited to try some of these things. I think it could definitely help me.
Yeah, it definitely would. And you can go to my website, The Breathable Body, see more information. I've got videos on there of some of the things about Pateco, and you may get educated there. And if you feel like, are you on medications for your asthma?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, take a look at that. And if you want to, I mean, I do teach the full Pateco method in a series of classes that just privately for up to 8 hours of classes that really make the huge difference, and will teach you how to actually reduce your medications and live without them if you do the exercises and retrain your breathing. So take a look at that. And write me if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's been great.
Good.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Laura, before we go?
Oh, I think I'm good for right now. Thank you very much.
Well, watch for your emails. I'll be putting this up on YouTube just for you people who've seen it. It's not for the public, and also a link to my Google Drive. I'll send you an email, and it'll have a PDF of all these slides.
Thank you very much.
You'll get all the
Great.
slides.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for being here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.